Forward looking. Lay it off. Touchdown! Off of Gressel. Made it to Elliott. Julian Carnes. A spectacular finish. Philadelphia.
Hello and welcome to the Free Kick Podcast. My name is Todd, and the Philadelphia Union fall to NYCFC by a score of 1-0, thanks to a goal by Alonso Martinez. Another Monday edition of the Free Kick Podcast, and I promise you guys, we'll get back to our regular Sunday evening scheduling next week, as I was like, well, I need to recover from getting back at 4 a.m. on Sunday morning as myself, Jose Nunez, and Kyle and Jillian Omni went up to Citi Field to cover the game in Queens, New York. And first time ever going up to New York City. First time ever riding a public train and getting on the, the Long Island Railway. And I got to give a quick shout out to Jose Nunez, who isn't joining me on the show tonight, unfortunately. But I got to give a shout out to Jose because if you're looking for a city tour guide, Jose's probably the best tour guide you can get. I had quite the experience getting to Philadelphia and then heading up to New York City for my first time ever. And I was a little bit nervous. Left my house here at 12:30 on Saturday in Maryland to catch a 3:05 train. And I wind up hitting so much traffic. It took me pretty much 2 hours, 30 minutes to get up to Philadelphia, which it should never take me that long to get up there. And I couldn't believe it that it took me an hour just to get to Delaware. And I get on 76, which I'm sure all you guys listening are familiar with that. And I was 2 miles away, and it took me 20 minutes to go 2 miles because of a crash or something. And so Jose's on the phone with me. He's like, dude, where you at? Where you at? I'm like, there's a crash or something. It's just taking forever. And so Jose's trying to direct me on the phone where to get to. And by the time that I park, I literally have 2 minutes until this train takes off. And so I'm sprinting to the Amtrak building. I'm sprinting down the escalator, and Jose is just standing at the door, just looking at me. And he can tell that I'm catching my breath, huffing and puffing, like, oh my God. Like, I left at 12:30 because I'm like, I need to give myself plenty of time because of traffic, checking GPS throughout the day. And still, leaving that early, I still hit traffic. And so, all in all, didn't miss the bus. And then Jose showed me around Penn Station, and we walked around, saw Madison Square Garden, then got on the Long Island Railway up to Citi Field. And yeah, excellent time with those guys. And New York City, a little bit crowded for me. And public transportation is what I want to say. You know, I didn't really understand the argument and why this fan base or some people in the fan base got so upset for the stadium being in Chester. And now that I've finally taken public transportation, I'm like, oh my God, they need this. They need better transportation in Chester. Just imagine if the train would drop you off right in front of Subaru Park. Now I can see why all these fans are saying that, yeah, the stadium needs to be in Philadelphia, just because it's a lot better than dealing with traffic and being able to walk everywhere. I mean, it makes it that much better. And hopefully one day we see better public transportation to Chester, because taking advantage of that and constantly having trains running, and then it was quite cheap. I think Jose and I paid $30 round trip going from Philadelphia to New York and then back. And then we paid $10 to use the Long Island Railway. And yeah, I just couldn't believe how easy the public transportation was. And again, shout out to Jose, really, really good friend. Love having him on the show. And yeah, I mean, for you guys who may not know Jose personally, he's a great guy. Yeah, everybody loves the soccer coverage, but I would say, you know, he's a better person. And so just guiding me through that whole experience, wouldn't have asked for a better person. And then having Kyle and Jillian in the press box with us as well. Love having them. And hopefully you guys enjoyed our coverage this past Saturday. I'm going to go ahead and pull up some comments here on YouTube. Eric says, howdy. Jarrett says, "What's up, Todd?" Shaggy says, "Yo, yo, yo, what's up?" Daniel, says, "Finally catching one live." Michael says, "Hello and welcome." Eric then said, "I love visiting New York City. Traffic has been super bad lately." Also talking about SEPTA just announced record cuts to services all over the city. We're not getting it anytime soon. That's pretty disappointing because, like I said, I can see why fans want it so much because it makes just traveling around so much easier. And I think Jose and I, we were like, yeah, if we were to get a Uber from Penn Station up to City Field, it would cost like $60+, and that's insane. And you'd probably be sitting in so much traffic. So yeah, public transportation definitely the way to go. Michael with a comment says, "Were the New York City fans abusive?" I didn't honestly personally experience anything or see anything. And this was interesting too because where we were in the press box, the Sons of Ben were right to us, to our left, and they were making a lot of noise. And again, I can see why fans want maybe potentially a roof over the river end just because of how much noise it makes. The sound goes up, then it comes right back down. And so there's probably like 50 Sons of Ben fans, and they were making a ton of noise, but I didn't see any issues whatsoever. And if you were there, please let me know if you guys had any issues, and we'll talk about it on the show. But me personally did not experience anything. Shaggy says, "First time ever, like ever in New York." Yeah, first time ever in New York. That was my 11th stadium now that I've checked off for a soccer game, but I've never been to New York City, and it's so crazy. I tell people at work all the time that I deal with, and I'm like, New York City is not that far away from Baltimore. Philadelphia is not that far away from Baltimore. Washington, D.C. is not that far away from Baltimore. Like, Baltimore is in a good area for three major cities. And that was my first time ever going up to New York City. And it was definitely an experience, definitely stressful getting to Philadelphia. But I would say if you go to New York, that's the way to go by train. Mike Thomas says here, "Don't drive in New York." Yeah, tell that to Kyle and Jillian Albany, Mike. I cannot believe that these two decided to drive up to New York City, but they didn't. I think they got back earlier than Jose and I because our train was delayed coming back to Philadelphia. And so we're just waiting around the train station and just waiting for time to go by. And if we would have known, if we would have checked earlier that our train was delayed by like 20, 25 minutes, we probably would have tried to walk up to Times Square just so I could see that for the first time. But yeah, I guess I got to go and make another trip up to New York City eventually. Cannot believe how cheap it was. Kyle chimes in. What's up, Kyle? He says they got home at 2:30. Again, you guys just joining live. I got home at 4 a.m. in the morning on Sunday, and my body hates me because I only got 4 hours of sleep. Woke up at 8 because it's like, yeah, this is the time to wake up. And I was like, yeah, I'm way too tired to do a show for you guys on Sunday. And that's why we're doing it Monday night. But we will be back with another live show, our regular scheduling on Sunday, as we talk about hopefully a Philadelphia Union win next week. But enough of my trip up to New York City. Let's get into this actual game. And I think the biggest storyline coming into this game was Andre Blake missing this game due to a adductor injury he sustained. Bradley Cornell said after the game Thursday, Friday. And we all remember that Andre Blake missed 51% of the games last year for the Union due to injury. And as you can see it down there on the bar, should Union fans be worried? Should Union fans start panicking that 8 games into the season, Andre Blake's picked up an injury in practice? Now, the good news is Bradley Cornell said after the game that he thinks that it's a very minimum injury, that he considers it day to day. Hopefully, Bradley Cornell will be available against Atlanta United this Saturday. But again, just seeing him battle multiple injuries last season, ranging from the concussions, the knee injuries, the groin injuries. 51% of the games missed last season. And I can remember so many times on this show last year, we're talking about, well, if Andre Blake was here for the Union, they would probably be making the playoffs. And a lot of bad goalkeeping last year by the Union. We don't have to rehash, the performances in Chicago, the performances against Inter Miami at home. And yeah, I do wonder if Andre Blake's available. Do the Union make the playoffs? Probably. But 8 games in, Andre Blake's already picking up an injury. Is that a sign of things to come? We know that he's a regular with the Jamaican national team, and that's great and everything, but I do question, can his body sustain it? Uh, Vince saying there was no direct train to Belson for New York City 2 Union 2 game next Wednesday. Yeah, that's disappointing. Michael says, I was worried, but seeing Kai back helped. Vince also chimes in, despite his mistake, I'm not worried if we roll with Rick. We'll talk about that mistake here in a second, Vince. I'll go ahead and start that so we bring it up again. Eric says, Blake is a glass cannon, amazing goalkeeper, but the wind blows wrong. He's injured. Daniel says, kind of missing 22 Burke off the bench. And yeah, I guess that's another good point that we should probably bring up here too. So I'll make sure to bring that point back up. Daniel, good point. Shaggy says, Union/Tanner should have had a quality number 2 behind Blake. It's been a year in, year out problem, either injuries or Jamaica. This is nothing new. And yeah, I mean, I would guess that the issue, well, not the issue, but what the Union were comfortable doing is going with Andrew Rick as that number 2 goalkeeper. He showed moments of brilliance against New York City last year. I mean, look, he was number 2 in SportsCenter's top 10 for that save that he made. And then you look at what he does with Union 2. He's a really good shot stopper. He's even better, I think, with his distribution. So I think the Union probably are comfortable rolling with Andrew Rick as their number 2 goalkeeper. But the thing that really hurts his team, and you've heard Jose Nunez and myself talk about it so many times, and that is having Oliver Zemla be your third choice goalkeeper and taking an international roster slot. That is really, really tough to use an international slot on a goalkeeper that's not going to be starting. And so we'll see what the Union decide to do with Oliver Zemla after the season. I believe he has an option for 2026. But again, looking at what Oliver Zemla was making last year for the Union and pretty much a third string goalkeeper taking an international roster slot, he was making $106,000. That's a lot of money spent for a third choice goalkeeper that didn't look great at times last year. And again, we know how highly valued those international slots are. And again, to waste a slot on a goalkeeper doesn't make a lot of sense to me. And you look at the ways that maybe this roster could have been better constructed. I do question the usage of the slot on a third choice goalkeeper. And granted, nobody really thought that Oliver Zemla would be the third choice goalkeeper last year. You look at him, and he had a really good season with Louisville previously in the USL, was good at Marshall, but then it just never translated to MLS, and just mental mistake. And it was really harsh to see. And I think maybe that pushed Andrew Rick a little bit further ahead last year just because of the mistakes that they saw time and time again from Zemla. And so I agree with the comments coming in saying that, yeah, the Union need to have a quality number 2 behind Andre Blake. And I do think that Andrew Rick could be that. But yeah, I think John McCarthy, you guys have heard us talk about that on the show too. That was supposed to be the guy last year, winds up signing for LA Galaxy. And now this season can even be the number 1 goalkeeper after winning MLS Cup for them last year. And yeah, that's crazy. But the Union go on to plan B, sign Zemla, and hasn't really worked out in their favor. Michael says here, I'm fine with Rick and goal, but I'm worried when it's Makanya and Blake. That's a lot of inexperience back there. Yeah, I do agree about Makanya. We're talking about his mistake or mistakes in this game in a bit there, Michael. Eric says, I love Rick, but I don't think he's the one. He made a nasty mistake. Reminded me of the same mistake Zemla made last year. Too inconsistent for the first team. Michael then chimes in and says, I'm fine with Rick and net. However, when it's Makanya and Rick back there, there's a lot of inexperience. Did you say the same comment twice? I think you did. Or you said Blake and Makanya, then you corrected with Andrew Rick. I got you. And Shaggy says, had a quality number 2 and let him go to a conference rival, Matt Freese. And that's a good point, and maybe that's something that we should probably talk about. Matt Freese wasn't really tested that much in this game. But at the same time, if the Union don't allow Matt Freese to go to New York City, then I think it's hard to say that Matt Freese would be the goalkeeper that he is right now with New York City, because the thing is, in Philadelphia, he wasn't getting playing time. And then he goes to New York City, beats Luis Braza, I believe the goalie was, that's now with DC United, beats him for the number 1 job. And when you're playing week in, week out, and no, we're not talking about MLS Next Pro, we're talking actual first team soccer, that's going to take your game to the next level. And I'm a little bit surprised that we're not seeing Matt Freese make his debut yet for the U.S. men's national team. Hopefully that comes. But he's been phenomenal since last season for New York City. And yeah, as easy as it is to say, well, if the Union still had Matt Freese, then they would be good in the goalkeeping department. But I don't think it's as simple as that. I really don't, because he needed to be playing week in, week out. That wasn't happening with Andre Blake. And, hindsight's always 2020. If anybody would have known that Andre Blake was going to miss 51% of the games last season, then yeah, sure, it would have been a lot easier to say, yeah, keep Matt Freese. Don't trade him to New York City. But regardless, the Union did when Matt Freese is shining for New York City. And let's not forget, Matt Freese is 26 years old. He needs to be playing. And so New York City gave him that opportunity to challenge for the number one spot. And he eventually wins it. And now he's looking like one of the best goalkeepers in MLS. And I think that's something that the Union always knew that Matt Freese had in him, to be a potential number one in this league, to be one of the best goalkeepers in the league. But the issue is you have Andre Blake, who's going to be one of the all-time greatest goalkeepers to ever play in this league, top 3 potentially. And I think with Union fans in the comments, maybe you guys are a little bit biased and would say he's the best, but I think Nick Raimondo would have something to say about that. But all in all, to say is, I don't think keeping Matt Freese, we would see the same Matt Freese that we see with New York City, just because he wouldn't play as much with the Union. But again, you can never really predict injuries, and the Union are stuck with Andrew Rick, who I think is a fine goalkeeper, and Oliver Zemlo, who you guys know on the show I'm not the biggest fan of, and I would imagine some of you guys on the show aren't the biggest fan. But you go ahead and we'll talk about the mistake you guys are calling for Andrew Rick here in a second. He did start his second game of the season, kept a clean sheet against St. Louis City, made one save in this game against New York City. But then Olivier Mbaizo, not on the match day squad at all. That was the first time this season that we saw no Mbaizo. And nobody knew that he was injured. Bradley Cornell says after the game that he's not recovered from a hamstring injury. And a little bit strange that was never mentioned in the player availability report. Olivier's only played twice this season. Started against St. Louis City, played about 20 minutes, or maybe it was a little bit less against Orlando City, the first game of the season. And we're seeing less game time for Olivier because of the emergence of Frankie Westfield. He's definitely earned his spot, played 7 games now for the Union. But we'll talk about the center back mistakes once again. This time it wasn't Jacob Glesnes. Maybe you do keep Olivier Mbaizo because Nathan Harriel is essentially your 3rd/4th center back with Jan Glavinovic out with that meniscus injury. Bradley Cornell never gave us an update how long that injury will be for Glavinovic, but he does expect him back at some point. But if you are going to play Nathan Harriel as that 3rd, 4th center back at times, then you probably need Olivier Mbaizo to be an option coming off the bench. Yeah, he will push for starting time against Frankie Westfield, but I do think that it goes Nathan Harriel, then Frankie Westfield, and then Olivier Mbaizo. But again, if you're playing Nathan Harriel as a center back, you start Frankie Westfield. If Frankie can't go all 90 minutes, then you have your 3rd choice fullback coming off the bench and Olivier Mbaizo. So we were talking about how Olivier maybe potentially gets sold, how there doesn't seem to be really a spot for him on this roster. Now the injury of Jan Glavinovic, the Union have until April 23rd to go out and potentially get another center back if they so choose. But maybe you hold on to Olivier Mbaizo because of Jan being out. Chris has a question here saying, is the window closed to bring in an alternative to Rick? If so, let's get behind Rick. And yeah, I had just mentioned April 23rd is the deadline that the Union have. So we'll go ahead and see that if the Union decide to go out with a goalkeeper, I don't think they will go out and sign one. I think, and there was a video that the Union posted of Ernst Tanner when they officially announced the Daniel Gazdag trade to Columbus, where he said, they're not going to rush into anything. They're going to take their time. If they feel like they need another piece, then they'll go out in the summertime and bring in a player. But yeah, Ernst pretty much said he's happy with the depth. I'm not sure I really believe that, and maybe this game against New York City gives him second thoughts. But yeah, April 23rd is when the window closes. Vince says your goals breakdown video was incredible because 6 Union players need to make incredibly poor decisions for that goal to happen. Yeah, it was pretty crazy, and I appreciate you checking out that video, Vince. I posted it this morning, so all you people who've watched on Twitter, on Substack, or on YouTube, I appreciate you guys checking out that video. Michael says, I'd want to bring in another center back over a goalkeeper. And yeah, that's kind of where I land too. Center back over goalkeeper. But I think everybody here listening to the show live or listening back on the podcast feed, I think everybody would say that the number one thing the Union need to bring in is an attacking midfielder, a playmaker. Then I think there would be some people in this fan base too that would say, bring in another striker. Because how many times you guys bash Chris Donovan? And he had a chance to score a game-tying goal once again. And that's what I tried to tell you guys a couple weeks ago. As angry as this fan base gets with Chris Donovan not scoring goals, it's incredible how he always finds the ball, whether at his head or at his feet. He just always finds himself in the right position at the right time. But we'll see what the Union do, if they do anything at all. I'm not sure I really believe Ernst Tanner when he says, yeah, if they need to do something, to do it in the summer market. Shaggy says, Union came out so flat against New York City. Yeah, it's a good point. We'll talk about that here in a bit. Michael says, I do kid, but that was a nice header from Donovan. Yeah, it was. Absolutely incredible chance there by Chris Donovan. Vince says, Donovan was the only guy to put a real chance on frame. Then you had that Quinn Sullivan chance too in the first half that got blocked. And again, we'll also talk about that here in a bit. That's one that Quinn probably should have put in the back of the net, but winds up getting blocked. But I think that's pretty much everything for Andre Blake being injured, not playing in this game. Olivier Mbaizo apparently being injured, not playing in this game. And so that brings me into the first true topic in this game, and that is a draw would have been suitable, is what Bradley Cornell said after the game. As you can see, the XG battle down there, this was pretty much split on. New York City had a 1.30, Philadelphia 1.27, and this was a really sloppy game. And I said to Kyle Almany in the press box as this game was going on and on, I said, even though New York City has the lead, this isn't a very good New York City team. They were struggling to create chances. Both teams were struggling to hold on to the ball. Neither team looked promising in the attack. Yeah, you had that huge save, as you just mentioned there, Vince, with Chris Donovan's header, and Matt Freese keeps it out late in this game in the 80th minute, I believe that chance was. But yeah, neither team was really challenging. Bradley Cornell had said that the Union had lost the duels battle, and I looked it up on FootMob, and the Union actually won that 34-23. They dominated in tackles, won 18-4. The only thing that New York City won in that was pretty significant was block shots, 8. But yeah, I'll go ahead and play that comment, the opening statement from Bradley Cornell after this game, talking about, yeah, this probably would have been a point deserving for both teams.
Unfortunately, we lost a lot of the battles, lost a lot of the duels. And this is something that we've been pretty good at all year long. And that's unfortunately got away from us tonight, especially on a tight field like this. So yeah, didn't go our way. And we made a little bit of a push at the end, and unfortunately we fall short on a game where probably a tie would have been, suitable. Wasn't our best performance by far. But this is one we just have to wipe away and move on from here. So it's a rival, it's a neighbor. And that leaves a sour taste in the mouth, and we have to move on from here.
Yeah, and Bradley Cornell is right. The Union do have to move on from that game and turn the focus to the next 2 games, which happen to be at home against Atlanta United, then DC United. Both teams struggling, but just like those 2 teams, the Union are also struggling. And yeah, like I had mentioned before the clip, the Union won the ground duels battle 34-23. They won the tackles 18-4. And I thought the midfield did their job. It was just not being able to attack with that final pass. And again, we'll hear more comments from Bradley Cornell here in a bit about the attack struggling the last few games. Kai Wagner got to speak with after the game, asked him that question too. And Kai had some interesting comments to say after the game, did not fully agree with Bradley Cornell's assessment of how the Union have been playing the last couple games. But I think for me was New York City just blocking 8 shots, and the Union didn't really create too many clear-cut chances in this game, and they certainly didn't create any or many clear-cut chances last week against Orlando City. And yeah, it's been pretty terrible for the Union the last couple weeks in the attack. And you had a chance with Bruno Damiani in the 9th minute with a cutback pass by Quinn Sullivan, who on the day looked to be the Union's most dangerous player once again. And that's a positive to take away from this game, is that Quinn's creating 2 to 3 chances a game. Just the Union are unable to put the ball in the back of the net with the chances that he's creating. But Damiani's shot gets blocked. And then you have that gift from Thiago Martins in the 18th minute where he passes the ball to Quinn Sullivan at the top of the 18-yard box. Quinn takes a touch, shoots, gets blocked by Justin Hack. And then the chance like we talked about with Donovan in the 80th minute. But those 2 chances in the first half, the Union have to at least put those shots on target. And credit to New York City for closing down the shot quickly. But one of those chances, maybe both of them, should have wind up in the back of the net. You're not going to get many chances like that if you're Quinn Sullivan, where the defender is literally passing you the ball. And now it's just you and Matt Freese. You take a touch and then your shot gets blocked. Again, credit to New York City for shutting down that attack. But you got to take advantage of those moments. And this is an issue we saw last year with this team, right? Where Inter Miami is the game that comes to mind. Down in Miami, the Union lose that game 3-1, but there was plenty of mistakes in that game by Miami. And the Union take advantage of it earlier on with Mikal Uwer scoring 57 seconds into the game. But then it was mistake after mistake after mistake by Inter Miami, and the Union couldn't find the back of the net. And then the same thing happens on Saturday night against New York City. It's a poor pass in the back by New York City. And unfortunately, the Union can't put it in the back of the net with Quinn Sullivan. Shaggy questions, Chris Donovan comes in over Uwer. I mean, we saw Mikal Uwer come in this game, and we also saw Chris Donovan, but Uwer was the first sub, I believe it was, and then and then Donovan was towards the end of the game. Mike Thomas says even prior to their best chances or goals have been shots from 30, 40 yards out. And yeah, that's something too that I noticed too, especially in this game against New York City, Mike, that a lot of the Union shots were outside the 18-yard box. But I think maybe part of that reason was because of how small this field is. And so taking those shots from that far out, it feels a little bit closer on longer fields. But regardless, yeah, I've noticed that too, and I think that's just a tactic that teams are playing, a low block. We definitely saw that against Orlando City, and they almost hit the Union on a couple counterattacks because the Union turned the ball over in the opposition's half. And so I think that was New York City's mindset coming into this game too. Look, there was a moment actually it was on the goal where Indiana Vasilev shoots the ball instead of opting for the pass to Quinn Sullivan at the top of the 18-yard box. The shot gets blocked, and then New York City go and hit on the counterattack. And it seems like maybe that's just how teams are going to approach the Union more and more, is just sit back in a low block. The Union going to struggle to break these teams down. They don't have too many players that are confident beating you 1v1. Yeah, the Union are going to send a lot of crosses in there with a Kai Wagner, or Indiana Vasilev had a couple moments too with crosses, and then obviously Quinn Sullivan as well. But yeah, Union have struggled against teams with low blocks, and now you're seeing them forced to shoot outside the 18-yard box. And yeah, Jovan scored outside the box this season. Mikal Uwer scored outside the box, but more times than not, those shots from outside the 18 are going over the crossbar into the supporter section. And so, yeah, you want to see the Union take advantage of shots inside the 18 because that's where they're best at. And so teams are going to continue to come in here, play that low block, and force you to take those shots that you really don't want to take. And you see frustration starting to build with this team. It was last week against Orlando City. Ty Baribo shot from like 25, 30 yards out. It's like, why are you shooting from that far out? But he wasn't getting too much service in the game. And so now he's just trying his luck. And so when teams can rattle you that much, now you make yourself more susceptible on the counterattack. And so I do think this is going to be a tactic we see teams or more teams approach in the next couple of weeks against the Union, just sitting deep and then try to hit them on the counter attack. You obviously have that big save by Andrew Rick in the 12th minute to deny Highness Wolf, where it's a poor press by Nathan Harrier or Maxi Morales. You have Quinn Sullivan not following the run on the left side of the field of Kevin O'Toole. Then O'Toole sends in a cross. Kai Wagner misses the ball inside the 18-yard box. It's a bad touch by Ojeda, but it works out because Indiana Vasilev doesn't track back and follow Highness Wolf, and it's a big right-handed save by Andrew Rick there on that play. And then in the 40th minute, I mean, New York City probably should have scored there with Macania missing his tackle on Alonso Martinez, I believe it was. When I pull up a clip, I'll go back and watch that. But yeah, they had a chance there, and then Ojeda's making a run off of Nathan Harrier on Jacob Glesnes. Nobody tracks him, and it's a cutback pass across the box by Martinez into Ojeda, and New York City are inches away from putting that into the back of the net to make it 1-0 in the first half. Mike says they've been figured out after 8 games, and I had wrote this in my match recap article that I posted this morning, and I do wonder when the pressure starts to build on Bradley Cornell. That is definitely something I want to talk about with this team. 3 games to start the season, you scored 10 goals. Now in your last 5, you're 1-3-1, only 3 goals scored, and you continue to concede goals. When do we start to see people question Bradley Cornell for the way that teams have seemingly figured them out? Because we all remember the town hall, and then after the season, the press conference with Ernst Tanner saying, if we were in Europe, I would have fired Jim Curtin around April for that long stretch of games where they went 10 games winless from April 14th to July 13th. But last year, the Union had 3 moments last year where they went winless in 4 more games. And now the Union are currently on a 3-game winless run. If they lose or don't get a point against Atlanta United, that becomes 4. And Kai Wagner said after the game that these are pretty much must-win games for the Union. And if they turn it around and get 6 points, then this conversation we're now having, the conversations you guys are having on social media, are non-existent. And I had also said if the Union aren't creating chances, then that's time to panic. And this is one of those games where the Union really didn't create too many chances. Orlando City, the Union didn't create too many chances. Is it time to panic? To Mike's point, have they really been figured out? Potentially. Let's see what happens these next 2 games against Atlanta United and DC United. I do think the mood turns sour if they don't pick up points against either one of those teams. And then I think you start seeing fans question on social media. I think people in the media will start questioning Bradley Cornell, and that pressure is going to start to rise. And I saw some people comment too that the goal this year should just win a playoff game or two, and be happy with that. And I think for a lot of people in this fan base, that's not good enough. This fan base is desperate for a trophy, and with the players they still have on this team, you want to see them fight for a trophy. And I don't know if 1 or 2 playoff wins would be good enough, but maybe it would be with the way that the Union are currently playing. Still 8 games into the season, and again, to Mike's point, he believes that the Union have been figured out, and you're starting to see moments like that, right? And I remember talking to Matt Baker from Flyover Footy of St. Louis, and he said, that seemed to be the issue with Bradley Cornell in his second season, that he didn't really have an option B or C. And to people's points tonight, talking about not having Corey Burke, Daniel brought up the comment earlier, said kind of missing 2022 Corey Burke off the bench. They don't really seem to have that guy, do they? And I think what was once strong, depth. Now you start to question the depth of this team, where guys that normally would have been coming off the bench are now asked to start because you trade away a key player in Daniel Gazdag. And we don't have to get into that argument again. And I do think it's good business getting $4 million up to $4.5 million, but you want to see that money reinvested into the squad. And if you don't reinvest that money into the team, then what are we doing? And I believe it was you, Mike, who had said on social media that this team on paper is worse than what they were a week ago. And I agree with you 100%. On paper, this team's a lot worse. And I'm not sure having Daniel Gazdag against New York City would have made much of a difference. But if you don't invest any of that money back into the team, then, I mean, fans are going to continue to question you, as they should. They have the right to question you. And Mike says the bar has been lowered so low, Union limbo. And I think we'll probably start seeing more and more fans feel that way as well. I mean, you guys were vocal last year, or wasn't it last year, where the whole pay Kai, and we started to see people come in with Sugarman out signs and Sugarman out T-shirts. I believe people started wearing into the stadium. And if things continue to go south, then I can fully see fans protesting that way again. I mean, we saw a lot of people say during the offseason that they gave up those season tickets because they weren't okay with the way that things were going with this team. And I wasn't expecting us to have this conversation this early into the season, but yeah, that's fine. And I do think, if the Union continue to struggle, then we're going to see a lot of very, very upset fans the next couple of weeks at home. Mike asks, is Vasilev adequate? To be determined on that. Michael says, fine with guys like trade, just annoyed when Ernst says we can just use the bench. And I think that has a lot of fans upset with that comment. Video that the Union had posted last week. I think it was on Friday. Shaggy says, exactly. If you don't reinvest in the squad, then why bother at all? Exactly. But yeah, I mean, long-winded answer of just us talking about, I think a draw was probably deserved of both teams. And I do agree with Bradley Cornell in that assessment that, 1-1 or at least a point for each team probably would have been the best case scenario, probably most deserving. But regardless, Union didn't take advantage of their very limited chances in this game. And New York City come away with the 1-0 lead. But I do want to talk about this. Union starting the season 3-0. They scored 10 goals in the process. Since then, 1-3-1, only scored 3 goals. And so I had asked Bradley Cornell after the game, is there any concern with how hot this team started the season? They were one of MLS's favorites 3 games into the season. You scored 10 goals. Ty Berieber was leading MLS, still leads MLS in goals. But things have dried up here the last couple games, particularly the last 5 games where the Union have only got 1 win, and they only scored 1 goal in that game against St. Louis. This is what Bradley Cornell had to say.
Yeah, it's always different on this field. I wouldn't put, the other 2 past performances. I think there were enough there to get goals and to get guys on the score sheet. I think tonight was a little different, and the field does play a role. You're looking one way and the stands that way, so your vision is totally obscured. And I thought we came close a few times, but not as clinical as we have been in the last couple of weeks. I mean, even last week I thought we were good, and the week before in Inter Miami I thought we were excellent. So yeah, we'll keep on grinding, keep on doing our thing. We're in a good way. We've used a lot of players off the bench. We've used a lot of different starting guys. So yeah, we'll continue to push that and create flexibility within our roster and making sure that everyone's ready to get the start.
And so Bradley Cornell on the night had mentioned New York City's field maybe 2 or 3 other times. And I would argue about that. I really would, where Bradley Cornell's played only 1 time prior to this game on Yankee Stadium, City Field, away to New York City is the point I'm trying to make. And they wound up losing 5-2 when he was the interim coach at New York Red Bulls. But coming into this game, under Jim Curtin, the Union had won the last 3 games away at New York City. And I remember Jim Curtin saying, look, part of what we changed was making the field smaller in practice. And Jim Curtin was okay just sitting deep and playing sort of a low block and then really unleashing the front attack for it. And so I don't know if I really buy into the field being an issue, just because this team, the last 3 seasons, came away with 3 straight wins. Now under Bradley Cornell, this team struggles. And I do question, the press. I don't think the press was really that effective, or would have been that effective on the night against New York City in such a small field. And for whatever reason, Jim Curtin just seemed to have the issue or the answer away, whether it be at Citi Field or Yankee Stadium. Bradley Cornell not so much. And I would agree that I would agree that, to your point, maybe the Union have been found out a little bit, Mike. And Mike says it's a convenient out. It absolutely is a convenient out. Michael says we beat them 5-1 on the field last year, so that's a hard argument. Yeah, exactly. That was the most goals that the Union had ever scored last year. 5 goals in one game against New York City. 10 goals, I believe it was, in the last 3 meetings against New York away. Jim Curtin knew how to beat this team. And for whatever reason, Bradley Cornell in his second game ever playing away to New York City, not really sure how to beat them, how to play on this field. And this team looked to shell on themselves. And yes, I do realize that in years past, the Union had Julian Kranza, but they also had a Ty Baribo in form, a Mikal Ur in form, a Daniel Gazag in form. And that's not really the case this game against New York City. Ty Baribo's goals have dried up here the last couple weeks. Mikal Ur is coming off the bench and really didn't have any chances in this match against New York City. Damiani had a chance. Quinn Sullivan had a chance, but it wasn't really great chances created by the Union in this game. And it's really hard for me to say that, yeah, it's this field. This is why the Union lost to New York City. I really don't buy that excuse. I don't buy that argument why the Union were poor on the night. Again, 1-3-1 in their last 5 games, only 3 goals scored, winless 4 out of the last 5 games, and that's not good enough. And again, I think you're starting to see this fan base get a little bit restless if this form continues. Damiani, he had 2 big chances against Orlando City last week. Ua, Baribo, Harry and Donovan also had moments against Inter Miami prior. And you heard Bradley Cornell talk about, we were good enough against Inter Miami. We were fine enough against Orlando City. But I don't think the Union were fine enough in that game. The only one I would argue, they were probably good enough to get a point down in Inter Miami. St. Louis City, you only win that game 1-0 because of 8 saves from Ben Lunt, the goalkeeper for St. Louis. Nashville, the Union had chances as well, but they lose that game 3-1. And again, the referee played a factor for sure and wasn't his best performance. Jose says, I wonder if the result changes Ernst's thoughts on the additions before 423. And yeah, that's exactly what we talked about. I mean, I'm not sure I really believe that Ernst is fine with what the Union currently have. Even prior to this game, I don't believe that. There's no way you, on paper, make your team worse getting rid of Daniel Gazdag. And if you have the opportunity to go out and get a player or two before the window closes, then why wouldn't you go out and try to make that happen? So yeah, again, 9 days before the window closes, we'll see if the Union go out and do something. But like I had teased a few moments ago, you guys had just heard what Bradley Cornell had to say in terms of the chance creations for the Union. Well, what did Kai Wagner think about the chances created in this game and the last couple of weeks, wherever the goals went?
I don't know. It's, like I said, I think just the connection was off today. I think the last couple of games it was exactly the same. I mean, today we want to stretch the line a little bit, but I didn't see a lot of the deep runs. And with this field, it's pretty tough because you just play a deep ball and the ball is straight at the goalkeeper. So I mean, we talked about it that it will be a different field. We trained a lot of different tactics this week. But I mean, like I said today, everything was off today. That wasn't a good game for us. We should just turn around now, get ready next week to Atlanta. And like I said, we need the fans now, get the 6 points in the next 2 games, and then everything will be different.
And again, I agree with Kai that the conversation is probably a little bit different if the Union win the next 2 games. But the fact of the matter is those games haven't happened yet. And the games that have happened, the Union really haven't created too many meaningful chances. You have Shaggy with a comment saying need a replacement for Gazdag or a suitable center back to back up Glesnes. Michael says notice no one was picking up his crosses. And yeah, even with Indiana Vasilov, he had a cross or 2 into this game where it was just a couple inches off. But yeah, the chance creation was really poor by the Union. And I'm glad Kai brought it up because it wasn't just this game. It's been the last couple games for the Union. And so we'll see if they correct those issues this Saturday against Atlanta United, another team in MLS that is struggling, lost at home to New England, who everybody was questioning. Caleb Porter, should he go? Should he stay? And New England pick up a 1-0 victory over Atlanta United. But we'll see. We'll see how the Union approach the game against Atlanta this Saturday. And Jose, well, let's see. Mike says at Jose, if it took him seeing this game to make a decision about the 4:23 deadline, that's embarrassing and incredibly short-sighted. Yeah, I don't know. I'd be shocked if it took this game for him to say, yeah, we need something in right now. There's just no way you can think on paper that, yeah, we have enough depth to replace the departure of Daniel Gazdag. There's no way. I agree with everybody that says that this team on paper is weaker than they were last week. So yeah, I don't know if it really did take this game for Ernst Tanner to go out and make something happen. But as we get ready to wrap up the show, and you guys had mentioned a whole bunch of these comments at the beginning of the show, talking about Andrew Rick's mistake, talking about Macanya's mistake, and yet again, it's another center back mistake, proves to be costly for another loss. This time it wasn't Jacob Glesnes, it was Oluwatu Macanya, and the Union get punished by that. Macanya doesn't follow the run of Alonso Martinez, gets caught on an island. Also times his tackle horribly wrong when Martinez in the 40th minute, where Martinez plays that cross into the box for Ojeda. Ojeda barely misses the ball, and that should have been 1-0. Wasn't the greatest game at all by Oluwatu Macanya. Again, for people who are just joining in live, Bradley Cornell said leading up to this game that there is no timetable yet for Jan Glavinovic to come back from his meniscus surgery, but he does expect him back at some point. Should the Union go out and sign another center back? I don't know if they will. Like I had said at the beginning of the show, I think Nathan Harriel is probably your 3/4 center back, and that then leaves Olivier Mbaizo with a spot in the squad still to come in off the bench for one of your fullbacks. But the one thing that is a little bit concerning as we approach May, the Union have the potential to play 9 games with 2 potential U.S. Open Cup games, 1 guaranteed Open Cup game. How did the Union approach U.S. Open Cup? And then you're playing 2 games every week, essentially, with a league game, a couple league games. You have LA Galaxy, I believe it is, on a Wednesday. This is how the schedule goes. It's a Saturday game away at Montreal. Then you either have a Tuesday or Wednesday U.S. Open Cup game at home. Then you welcome Columbus Crew at home Saturday, May 10th. Then you have LA Galaxy at home on Wednesday, on the 14th. Then you go away to Atlanta United on Saturday, the 17th. Then you are either home or away for a U.S. Open Cup game on Tuesday, the 20th, or Wednesday, the 21st. Then you're at home against Inter Miami, the 24th. Then you're away at Toronto on the 28th, and then away in Dallas on the 31st. And yeah, this is a really, really hectic May schedule. And you're down a center back. Did the Union go out and potentially sign another center back? I don't think so. I think, again, I said it a few moments ago, it's probably going to be an attacking midfielder. A lot of people in this fan base would say maybe another striker because they're not happy with Chris Donovan. They're not happy with Mikal Uhr either. And I saw some people calling Bruno Damiani a bust already, which is crazy to me. But yeah, we'll see what happens there. I'm not even going to read that comment, Jose. Mike says exactly should have had a plan in place before the subtraction of Gazdag. And I do believe that they do, Shaggy. Michael says, I was hoping they had a plan for Gazdag. Didn't sound like Ernst did. I'm not buying it yet, and maybe I'll wind up being wrong. You have Shaggy saying, I wonder how much the new USL model is going to affect smaller market MLS teams like the Union with Pro/Rel. I think you're potentially talking about there, Shaggy. Man, if we talk about Pro/Rel, it could be a long episode. I don't think that's going to be too much of a challenge for MLS, but yeah, regardless, another mistake in the back for Union center backs. We've seen mistakes galore from Jacob Glesnes. That's been the key the last few years. Macanya's had mistakes. You're down a center back in Glavinovic. Should the Union go out there and buy another center back? I think it's a good question to ask. I think it's a good topic, and we'll see again. April 23rd is the deadline, but yeah, a costly mistake, and you guys were mentioning Andrew Rick. Despite his mistake, I'm not worried if we roll with Rick. You said at the beginning of the show, Vince. I don't think that was Andrew Rick's fault coming out for that. I think that was him just realizing the danger of Alonso running in between Nathan Harriel and Makanya not tracking the run. Eric at the beginning of the show said, I love Rick, but I don't think he's the one. He's made a nasty mistake. Reminded me of the same mistake Zemla made last year. Too inconsistent for the first team. I don't agree with that comment. I don't think that was Andrew Rick's fault at all. Makes a big save to start this game. Probably should have been 1-0 at that point for New York City. I thought he commanded his box well. I think he was in the right position majority of this game. But then he just comes out, plays a sweeper keeper because Makanya, for a second late, he just gets caught ball watching, checks back and sees that Martinez is in behind on goal. And Andrew Rick comes out to try to play sweeper keeper, try to play hero ball. Mike says, Rick's young, he's learning, he's fine. Agreed, 100%. If anything, like I said, it's on Makanya. And coming into the season, there was questions of Makanya. Starts the season hot. And it's like, okay, look, Ernst Tenner knew what he was talking about in Makanya. And I'm not going to say after one poor game, it's time to write off Makanya. But he is only 20 years old. He is inexperienced. And we are going to see mistakes. And again, should the Union go out and sign another center back with Jan being out? Bradley does expect him to be back at some point this season, but we shall see. Let's go ahead and talk about Blunder of the Week. I hope I didn't miss anything from this recap of this game. I appreciate the comments from you guys tonight. And again, I did this last week, I believe it was, when I gave Blunder of the Week to James Tarkowski of Everton for his challenge on Alexi McAllister. I didn't include that video because I didn't want the podcast to be taken down on YouTube. So I'm going to do the same thing because Blunder of the Week is going to go to Mbappe for his challenge on Antonio Blanco and Real Madrid's 1-0 win over Alavés. And it was a pretty nasty challenge. I'm going to go ahead and just rewatch this. Hopefully I don't play audio, but I'll leave the link in the show description for you guys to see. So Real Madrid are winning the game in the 39th minute, up 1-0. Mbappe comes flying in with a challenge. No need to come in this dangerous. Stud spikes up, takes out Blanco's right leg, and he gets a straight red card. Supposed to miss 2 games, but it was a horrible challenge. And you see more and more challenges like this, I feel like, in soccer, and somebody's going to get seriously hurt. And I get things happen so fast and whatnot. I'm happy that, a player as high profile as Mbappe, I'm happy to see that. Yeah, they gave him 2 games. I think maybe if it was anybody else other than Mbappe, probably would have got a little bit longer of a suspension. But yeah, it was reckless, it was dangerous, and Mbappe gets Blunder of the Week.
Yeah, not good.
Not good at all for that challenge. Comments. Michael says, yeah, he saw that one. Mike Thomas says, the Union continue to build teams that have close to 0 margin of error. If one thing goes sideways, the whole thing gets derailed. Yeah, maybe. Michael says, Messi wouldn't have been suspended or got it in the red. Yeah, probably not. There's a good comment here by Shaggy. Said, how about Suarez biting his own teammate? I got to show my dad that video. I don't think he's seen that video. Suarez bites again, bites Jordi Alba. Insane. How do you bite your own teammate? Maybe that should have been Blunder of the Week for the CCC game last week against LAFC. But yeah, dumb challenge by, I almost said Olivier Mbaizo, by Mbappe on Antonio Blanco. Real Madrid wound up winning that game 1-0. Regardless, so the red card didn't really play too much of a factor. But dumb challenge. Again, I'll leave the video in the show description so you guys can see that. But almost an hour into this podcast, and I appreciate you guys checking in, leaving a whole bunch of comments, and you guys keep the show rolling, the best part of the show. And I'm appreciative of you guys every single week just tuning in. Like I'm appreciative of Jose Nunez, so it's enough flowers given to you. And again, just thank you guys so much for tuning in, leaving your comments, checking out my work. And if you guys aren't following the podcast on Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook, follow @FreeKickPod, wherever you get your podcast of The Free Kick. Check out the YouTube channel, live every single podcast on YouTube, youtube.com/FreeKickPod. There is a latest goals breakdown video out for this game. So after you guys get done watching this or listening to this, go ahead, check out the goals breakdown video. Go ahead and check out the Substack for my writing, goals breakdown, or podcast, all in one place, thefreekick.substack.com. Chris says, nice job. Mike salutes. I appreciate all of you guys commenting, all you guys checking in the podcast. Again, we'll be back with our regular scheduled show next Sunday at 9 p.m. You guys are the best part of the show. You guys are hoping for a Union win. I'm hoping we have something enjoyable to talk about next week and writing about, and hopefully we get goals for the goals breakdown video. But until then, my name is Todd, and this is the Free Kick Podcast.